All right, Tov. Okay, so we are continuing in the book Otzrot Chaim, part of the Etz Chaim, Tree of Life, the quintessential book on the Arizal's teachings of Kabbalah, regarding the evolution of creation, the mechanics of how all of creation, of how reality came into being, came into existence, giving us the roadmap to be able to navigate through the supernal worlds when we begin to apply these teachings in the meditative applications. But now we're trying to learn what is the territory. So we're in the gate of bound, Shar HaKudim, gates of the bound, chapter 3. Now when the Keter emanated, the last one, the Malchut was completed with all 5 of her internal lights. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, and Yechida. So we said before that by the time the Keter emanated out, it gave the Ruach to the Chochmah, gave Neshama to the Bina, gave Chaya to Zeir Anpin, and the Malchut received the Yechida, meaning she's now complete in all 5 of her lights, 5 of her internal lights, what's called Or Pnimi. And if it says 5 internal lights, then you already can deduce from this, because you are all Talmudic masters. So when you hear internal lights, what is that telling you? It's telling you that there's also encompassing lights. There's also Or Makif. But right now, as the Keter emanated, the Malchut was completed with all 5 of her internal lights: Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, and Yechida. But the other Sefirot were still missing light. Right? We can see that Zeir Anpin was still missing his internal Yechida. The Bina was missing the Chaya, and if we do it like this, the Zeir Anpin was still missing one of his lights. Oh. The Bina was missing 2 of her lights. The Chochmah was missing 3 of his lights, and the Keter was missing the most. Yeah? It was missing the most. And now the Arizal says that this was all done with precise intention, so that they would need to return and ascend back to the source in order to be completed. And when they ascended, the Keter was the first to return to the mouth. The Malchut was the first to emanate. The Keter was the last one to emanate. But now they're all kind of just turning around in their place. And now the Keter is the first one to return back to the mouth of... I did it again. Mouth of Adam Kadmon. The Keter emanated last and returned first, while the Malchut was the opposite. She emanated first, but returned last. And this is the secret of the verse in Yeshayahu, chapter 44, that Yeshayahu says, Ani Rishon ve'ani Acharon, umi bi'eladai en Elohim. He says, I am the first and I am the last. The prophet says that God is saying, I am the first and I am the last, and there is no other God before me. And so the Arizal says, what's the secret of what the prophet is saying? I am the first and I am the last. He says this verse holds true for both the Keter and the Malchut. Both of them can say, I am the first and I am the last. Only they are the opposite. This is what is explained in the Zohar, that Ani Rishon, Ani, the letters Aleph, Nun, Yud, can mean the name I. And the I is the name of the Malchut itself. And the opposite, you can take the same letters, Aleph, Nun, Yud, and you change them around, you get Aleph, Yud, Nun. Aleph, Yud, Nun is Ein. Ein means nothing, which is kind of interesting because in the very same word, you have two two different meanings. You have, this word means I, ani, but this word, same letters, right? Just change around. This word means nothing, ein, ein sof, ein. And so the ani, he says, is referring to the malchut, and the ein is always referring to the keter, meaning that a person can be in an ani state of consciousness, malchut consciousness, where I am aware of self, and it is me now that is operating through the world, whereas a person can elevate into an ein state of consciousness, keter state of consciousness, where it's a more transcendent state, where there is no self that is experiencing it, being the one that is behaving or doing that thing. So he says this verse is the secret of that. Meaning ani rishon. Who is ani? Malchut. Malchut is the first to what? Emanate. The ani acharon. And I, who the malchut, is also the last, meaning the last to return. But he's saying this also holds true for the keter, because it's the same letters. You can write it ein, which is the keter. Ein rishon, the keter was the first, meaning the first to return. The ein acharon, and the keter was the first to emanate. So this is the secret of that verse. So, and know that every aspect, every world, and every partsuf has 10 sefirot, no more, no less. And they consist of 10 pnimi, or internal lights, and also 10 makif, or encompassing lights. The internal lights correspond to the 5 partsufim. We said a partsuf is a complete sephirotic system. So I can take the keter and look at it as one individual sephirah, but then I can double click on the keter, and if I can see the entire microcosmic world within the keter, I consider that like a partsuf, which is a complete system of 10 individual sephirot. So the internal lights correspond to the 5 partsufim, which are Arich Anpin, Abba, Ima, Zer Anpin, and Nukva. And I'll do this just one time so that you have it, and you'll be able to reference it after that, because this is as basic as it gets. All right. So the keter, it's kind of big. Right. The keter will be Arich Anpin. Chochma will be Abba. Bina will be Ima. The 6 middle, we'll just say 6 sefirot, which is Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. I'm going to assume everybody knows that. And we call that, as a system unto itself, we call that Zer Anpin, and then finally the Malchut, we call that the Nukva. Okay? This is the ABCs of Kabbalah, knowing the relationship between the Sefirot and between the Partsufim. In classical Kabbalah, mostly talked about Sefirot and the relationship in the worlds of the Sefirot, whereas the main innovation of the Arizal, Rabbi Isaac Luria, that lived here in Tzfat 500 years ago, was the relationship of the Partsufim. So if I'm talking about Sefirot, it's Keter, Chochma, Bina, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchut. Those are 10 Sefirot. But if I want to look at them as 5 complete Sephirotic systems, the Keter equals Arich Anpin, which is Aramaic for the long face. but we're not going to literally translate it to that, but just Arich Anpin. The Chokhmah, which is not the way you're supposed to spell Chokhmah. Chokhmah, as a complete sephirotic system, Partsuf, will be called Abba, which means father. The Bina, as a complete system, will be called Ima, which means mother. And the 6 middle Sefirot, we group them always together, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, will be considered Zer Anpin. And the Malchut, the final 10th Sefirah, as a complete system will be called the Nukva. So if we're talking about Sefirot, you have 10 Sefirot. If we're talking about Partsuf, which literally means face, but what it really means is a complete system of Sefirot, meaning within Arich Anpin, it will have a complete system of 10 Sefirot. Within Abba, we'll have a complete system of 10 Sefirot. Ima, complete system of 10 Sefirot, and so on and so on. And now there is a relationship between all of them.
What's this random?
Questions at the end. Please write the question down. I just want to, for people at home, so it's just as less, I want to keep the flow. So Arich Anpin, which I know it means long face, but if you guys want a way to understand the relationship between these Partsufim, this is going to be the grandfather. This is going to be the father. This is going to be the mother. This is going to be the husband or the son. And this is going to be the wife slash daughter. Okay? So there is a relationship between Abba and Ima, the father and mother, and there is a relationship between the father and mother and Zer Anpin as their son, or between Malchut as their daughter, and there's also a relationship between Zer Anpin and Malchut themselves, which is husband and wife. Yeah, okay. Please, if you have any questions, please write them down. We'll get to them at the end. And so now the Arizal says that every world, every sphere, every Partsuf has 10 Sefirot, no more, no less, and they are 10 Pnimi, internal lights. Each one of these has 10 internal lights, or Pnimi, and also 10 Makif, or encompassing lights. The internal lights correspond to the 5 Partsufim. They are Arich Anpin, Abba, Ima, Zer Anpin, and the Nukva. And they are also called Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, and Yechida. So if we were going to expand this table, this would correspond to the light of Yechida. This would correspond to the light of Chaya. This is going to correspond to the light of Neshama. This is going to correspond to the light of Ruach, and this is going to correspond to the light of Nefesh. Okay? So this is if you're talking about light. Again, this is an interchangeable Zrat Hashem make like a proper PDF, actually print it out and yeah, okay. So this is light. These all correspond to one another. Okay. So there's 5 internal lights, Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida, and each Sefirah also has encompassing lights. But know that the Arizal says that in the lights, the worlds and Partsufim from the nose of Adam Kadmon and above, all these aspects are complete in every Partsuf. 5 internal lights, which are the 10 individual Sefirot, and 5 encompassing lights, meaning every aspect has Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chai, Yechida of internal light, and it also has Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chai, Yechida of encompassing light. But from the mouth of Adam Kadmon and below until the end of all the worlds, there are only 5 internal lights and only 2 encompassing lights that correspond to the Chaya and Yechida of every Partsuf. So from the mouth of Adam Kadmon and below, we only are referring to these two upper lights. Again, every aspect in creation, every sphera, every light, every world, whatever you're talking about, always possesses these 5 internal lights. But the encompassing lights from the mouth of Adam Kadmon and below, they only have the Yechida and the Chaya of encompassing light, meaning the other 3 lights, Neshama, Ruach, and Nefesh, are not revealed. This is because the light diminished from there, from the mouth of Adam Kadmon and below. And so in this world, the world of Akudim, the world of the bound, which are the lights that emanate from the mouth of Adam Kadmon, there are only 5 internal lights and 2 encompassing lights. And he says, remember this. And so when the Keter disappeared back into its source, the Chokhmah ascended to the place of the Keter, and the Bina ascended to the place of the Chokhmah, and so on and so forth. Okay? Remember, we said if we're talking about now the lights now returning back to the mouth of Adam Kadmon, who's the first one to go back in? The Keter. So we say the Keter, he's back inside. He's been absorbed now back in the infinite light of the Creator. The only thing that was revealed was the Chokhmah. And the Chokhmah now, it was like a chain. If you guys remember, it's like a chain. So if the Keter is opening, if the Keter is ascending one level up, then it's dragging everybody else down that was under it, because they're bound together. Remember, this is the world of the bound, and so now everything is being pulled back up. So if we say that in the Keter, when the Keter emanated out, what it left through that process of separation was the vessel of the Keter. And so now who is in the place of the Keter? The Chokhmah. Who is in the place? Who is in the place of the Chokhmah? The Bina. Who is in the place of the Chesed? The place of Bina. That's going to be the Chesed. Let's do it like this. Bina, Chesed, Chesed Gvura. Bina, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yisod, and Malchut. Yeah? So this is the place of the Chesed, the place of the Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yisod, and Malchut. So now when the Keter emanated back into the mouth, it drags everybody up. So who's in the place of the Keter? The Chokhmah. Who's in the place of the Chokhmah? Bina. Who's in the place of Bina? Chesed. Who's in the place of the Chesed? Gevura. Who's in the place of the Gevura? Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut. So we have a situation now where who's in the place of the Malchut itself? Nobody. There's no light that is left in the vessel of the Malchut, in the place of the Malchut. And so when the Keter disappeared back into its source, the Chokhmah ascended to the place of the Keter, the Bina ascended to the place of the Chokhmah, and so on and so forth, until finally the Malchut ascended to the place of the Yesod. And as the Malchut ascended to the place of the Yesod, she acquired an additional light, which was the first Makif, the first encompassing light, corresponding to the internal aspect of Chaya. Remember, we said there's 5 internal lights, but only 2 encompassing lights. When they all emanated out, Malchut was completely, she had completely acquired all of her internal lights, but she was still missing her encompassing light, or Makif. She had 2 encompassing lights, Chaya and Yechida, and so now through the process of elevating back up, and as she became closer to the source, because now that she's in the, now that she's in the vessel of the Yesod, she's one step closer to her source, which allows her to acquire now the other light of Chaya. So if she had Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida, those were all internal lights. She is now able to also acquire her Chaya, encompassing light. That was for the Malchut. And now that Zer Anpin also ascended one level, it also acquired another aspect of light. What was Zer Anpin missing? From the beginning, he was missing his 5th internal light, the Yechida, and so now what that did was also give him, that also completed and now he also got his Yechida. Yeah? Actually, we'll do this for all 6, just to make things as easy as possible. And so he already had Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, and now what was acquired? The Yechida. Again, 5 internal lights. And that also helped the Bina, because now also the Bina ascended to a higher level. She's now in the place of Chokhmah. And the Bina acquired the additional aspect of the internal Chaya. What was she missing? The Bina was missing the internal Chaya. So now she acquires that. So she had Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, and now she gets light of Chaya. And the Chokhmah acquired the aspect of Neshama. That's what he was missing. So he gets Nefesh, Ruach, and now he gets Neshama. All that, so again, as soon as that first step, the Keter emanated back into the source, all of the Sefirot elevated one level, allowing them to acquire more light. And the next step after, then the Chokhmah ascends to the source. And when the Chokhmah ascended to the source, the Bina ascended to the place of the Keter. I'm going to do this again. I wish I had these 3, like these holographic things. I could just like move these around. That would be great. But we're gonna make a new. Okay. Again, mouth. And so now the Keter, and now the Chokhmah emanates back into the mouth of Adam Kadmon. So we had the place of the Keter, place of the Chokhmah, place of the Bina. I'm going to shortcut it by just giving one for containing all 6 for Zeir Anpin. And then we had the place of the Malchut, right? So this is the place of the Keter, place of the Chokhmah, place of the Bina, place of what's called Chagat Nehi, yeah? Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. And then this is Malchut. Those are the places, the vessels of them. So now as the Chokhmah ascended back into the mouth of Adam Kadmon, the Bina was dragged up one level higher. Where is she now? She's in the place of the Keter. Yeah? Zeir Anpin is in the place of... Zeir Anpin is a short for all 6 of the Sifirot. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. And the Malchut is now in the place of Bina. Right? She was in the place of the Yesod. Now she elevated one step higher. And what did that do? Now that added additional light to all of them. What did it add to the Malchut? The Malchut. This also added to Zeir Anpin its first Makif, right? So the Bina ascended to the place of Keter. She then acquired the internal Yechida. So if we're working for the Bina, right? What was she missing? She was still missing her Yechida. That's what she acquired now. She had Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, and now she acquires the Yechida. And that also added to Zeir Anpin what he was missing. He had Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, and Yechida of the internal lights, and now he gets the Chaya of encompassing light. And the Malchut also acquired the higher Makif encompassing light parallel to the Yechida. And so she had Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida. She also had her encompassing Yechida, and now she acquires the Yechida of encompassing light. The Malchut, right. And now the next stage, the Bina ascends to the source. And now if the Bina is ascending to the source, right, the mouth, the Keter was there, Chokhmah was there, and now Bina's back. She's back in the mouth, which means you had the place of the Keter, place of the Chokhmah, place of the Bina, place of Zeir Anpin, and place of the Malchut. Right? And so now that the Bina has elevated back, who's in the place of the Keter? Zeir Anpin. Who's in the place of the Chokhmah? Malchut. And then the rest are empty. Yeah? And when the Bina ascended to the source, the Chesed of Zeir Anpin ascended to the place of the Keter. It then acquired the second Makif parallel to the internal Yechida. And so now he acquires Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida. He had the encompassing Chaya. And now what did he acquire? His encompassing Yechida. Right? Acquire the second Makif. What did the Malchut acquire?
What more can she get?
She acquired nothing else because she already acquired, when the Chokhmah elevated back into the mouth, she had already acquired all of her light, meaning the 5 internal lights and the two encompassing lights. So when the Bina entered into the mouth, there was no chiddush, there was no innovation, there was nothing new, that the Malchut was already complete. Only Zer Anpin took a little bit more time to complete. Maybe that's why they say girls mature faster than the boys do. He has bar mitzvah 13, she's already at 12. Maybe this is because the Malchut was already complete. She had acquired all of her levels of light before Zer Anpin. And from then on, neither Zer Anpin nor the Malchut acquired anything else. And here in the world of the bound, the Shar HaKudim, Zer Anpin and Nukva were greater than Abba and Ima. We see that here in this dimension, that Zer Anpin and the Malchut, meaning the son and the daughter, are greater than the father and the mother. How so? For Zer Anpin and Nukva were panim bepanim, face to face, meaning they were able to stand face to face. But Abba and Ima were still achor be'achor, back to back. Okay? This is a new concept that is so very fundamental to learning the Arizal system of Kabbalah, is that if we're talking about the partsufim, which are the relationships of the Sefirot, that there are three main types of positions or relationships that these Sefirot are able to stand. The first and most fundamental aspect of the relationship is something that is called Achor be'achor. Achor be'achor, which means back to back. Yeah? It says Adam and Eve were created back to back. They were conjoined twins, if you will. That there's a relationship between the partsufim, which is called back to back, which we're going to go very into depth in understanding the relationship between this. But that's the initial stage, that's the first step. And now there's a transference of energy from one partsuf to another partsuf through the backs, through their backs, meaning there's the flow of energy is flowing from the back, yeah? Which is an undesired state. It's a fundamental state, undesired, but it's a necessary state for transference of energy, but that's not the ultimate place that we want to be in. And so the higher state is something called panim bepanim. Panim bepanim, which literally is face to face. This is where we want to be. Panim bepanim. Face to face means there is now a transference of energy from the faces. Yeah? And so in order to bring these partsufim from a state of back to back to face, they need light. The more light they have, the more they are able to be in a state of panim bepanim. And generally speaking, in order for them to come panim bepanim, they need at least the very minimum of the light of Chaya. That there has to be the light of Chaya to be able to come panim bepanim. So at this level, they could have the nefesh. Well, everybody always has the nefesh. They always start out nefesh. But as they develop, as they grow, they can acquire the ruach. And they can even acquire neshama, but they will still be in a state of what's called back-to-back, achor be'achor. That in order for them to be able to stand face to face, they must have the level of chaya, chokhmah. And when we talk about trying to understand that psychologically speaking, how does that apply into our own lives? It becomes a very, very, very powerful model for personal growth and development and the way we relate to the other world, to each other and to the world. But nonetheless, right now, Zeir Anpin says, the Arizal says that at this stage, at this moment, yeah, Zeir Anpin and Nukva were greater than Abba and Ima. For Zeir Anpin and Nukva were able to stand face to face, but Abba and Ima were still achor b'achor, back to back. Why? This is because Zeir Anpin and Nukva acquired all that they needed for a zivug. Okay, what is the ultimate? What is the ultimate purpose of being able to stand face to face? It is for something called a zivug. Zivug. Zivug literally means a unification. Meaning when we're talking about a transference of energy from one partuf to another partuf, from the masculine aspect to the feminine aspect, there are different types of zivugim, unifications. How does the energy transfer from the masculine aspect to the feminine aspect? So there is something that is called a transference of energy by way of nishika, which is a kiss. There's another transfer of energy which is called a chibuk, hug. And the ultimate level of transference of energy is the proper zivug, which is an intimate relation, meaning there's a unification between the yesod of the masculine aspect and the yesod of the feminine aspect. Again, not going into that right now because this is like, we're not there. This is what, when we get to the actual relationships between Zeir Anpin and Nukva and Abba and Ima, that's what we're going to talk about all this stuff. But just to kind of understand why he's saying that Zeir Anpin and Nukva were at a higher level right now because they had already acquired the level of Chaya, which enabled them to have a zivug, whereas Abba and Ima did not have those lights because they ascended back into, they were absorbed back into this divine, infinite a light of the Creator, and there is no levels, there's no characteristics, they don't possess anything in a revealed state. So he says, Zeir Anpin and Nukva acquired all that they needed for a zivug, unification, which was the 5 internal lights and the 2 encompassing lights. These they acquired even before returning and ascending back to their source. They were already complete in all of their lights, which meant since they had all of their light, they could already stand face to face. They could already stand face to face. Yeah? This is Zeir Anpin. This is Malchut, the Nukva. Something that Abba and Ima were not able to do. So there's something that is more advantageous to them. This was not so with Abba and Ima. They were still incomplete. Abba only had 3 internal lights and no encompassing light by the time he entered back into the mouth, and Ima only had the 5 internal lights but no encompassing light, meaning that there is something necessary about the masculine aspect of having the light of Chaya in order to have a zivug. Meaning that she could have acquired Ima, the mother did acquire Chaya, but it was still not able to have a zivug until the masculine aspect, Chokhmah, also possessed Chaya. Meaning she's ready for man, but he's still a boy. But I digress. And even before any Sephirah had returned to the source of Zeir Anpin and Nukva, they already had all that they needed for a zivug unification. And the explanation of this is that in order to have a zivug unification, there must be mochin, or mental energy, which is from chokhmah and below, which corresponds to chaya. And even before the Keter returned to the source, Zeir Anpin already acquired the light of chaya, which corresponds to mochin of chokhmah. This was not so with Abba. Even after the Keter returned to the source, Abba never possessed the light of Chaya, which is Chokhmah. Therefore, he was never able to, so to speak, grow out of his childish state of consciousness, which is only a state of egocentrism and selfishness. And so, therefore, he was not able to be a mashpia, to engage in a zivug with the feminine aspect, because he did not possess the ability to transcend his own selfishness. Meaning he was worried more about himself than he was worried about someone else. And in that state, there cannot be a transference of energy. And if you ask, why then did Zerah Anpin and Nukba even return to their source at all? If you say the entire purpose of them emanating incomplete was so that they will want to return to the source, therefore acquiring more and more of their light, here we see that Zerah Anpin and Nukva already possess all of their aspects, all of their light. So why even would they continue to return back to the source, which they did? So he answers the question. The answer to this is that all of the energy and life force is from Abba and Ima. All of the light that Zerah Anpin and Nukva receive is from Abba and Ima. There is a relationship of energy that even though he possesses this light that he is able to give to the Nukva, he still receives this light from this unbroken chain. And as soon as Abba and Ima disappeared back into the source, he was left without the light, and so therefore it was necessary for him to also return back to the source. And here he says also, the energy and life force is from Abba and Ima, and since Abba and Ima ascended above, Zerah Anpin and Nukva, their children, did not want to be separate from them because that's where all of their energy and their life force comes from. And so they decided, and then so they ascended after them to be close to their parents, so to speak, to the source of where their energy was coming from. The second reason for them having to ascend was to make the vessels. So all of the light needed to empty out from the vessels in order to leave remember we said the coarse and thick light, and allow the refined light to totally leave from it, thereby creating the vessels. Was to make the vessels, and so the Creator intentionally had them emanate incompletely, so that they will desire to ascend, and thus allowing the vessels to be created. End of chapter 3.
Yashkar.
Okay.